Assalamu alaikum. Hello everyone. Today I am going to start a subtopic under the unit cells, which is specialized cells, tissues, organs and systems. In the last lecture I had given you some explanation about what is the significance of specialized cells in our body, why do we need them, why is it necessary that we should have different kinds of specialized cell rather than one big cell which is doing all different kinds of jobs in the body. Today we will be going one step further, in which we will understand how these groups of specialized cells will work together to form tissues, and how different kinds of tissues will organize to give rise to organs, and how different organs will organize them into systems of your body, especially in case of highly complex multicellular organisms like us. So let's start. As you can see in this slide, that we can see different kinds of specialized cells like the muscle cells and the neurons, the epithelial cells of the trachea, the intestinal epithelial cells. So whenever we have a group of cells, let's say a group of muscle cells, they are working together, so they will now be known as a muscle tissue. If a group of neurons are working together, they are receiving and they are sending impulses, nervous impulses to the brain. They are receiving the impulses and then at the same time they are also bringing back the impulses from the brain to different parts of the bodies. So when they are grouped together and they are doing functions together, they will be now known as neuronal tissue or nervous tissue. A group of intestinal epithelial cells will be known as the intestinal epithelial tissue. A group of epithelial cells in the lungs will make up the epithelial tissue, and so on. So this means that similar kind of cells working together are known as a tissue, right? So cells can't work alone. They have to have cooperation with the other cells so that they can work as a whole unit, and such a unit of similar cells is known as a tissue. Moving on, these tissues, different kinds of tissues, they can combine to form an organ. To give you an example, let's take the example of a stomach. We all know that the stomach is that organ where we put our food inside, and it contracts and relaxes in order to break the food into small particles. Now in order to do this, of course the stomach muscle should have muscular cells so that they can contract and relax. Since the stomach is also full of feelings in the sense that, you know, when your stomach is empty, you feel hungry. So this means there must be some nervous tissue inside the stomach which gives you this feeling, and this nervous tissue might be having a connection with your brain as well, with your higher centers in the brain. And at the same time, although it's not mentioned over here, but the stomach must also be having a vascular tissue or a tissue which is supplied with blood vessels, so that blood or oxygenated blood reaches the stomach and supplies it with the oxygen and the nutrients so that it can live and perform its functions adequately. So when different kinds of tissues, they join together, they give rise to an organ. So to state it simply, we would say the stomach is an organ because it is a combination of a muscle tissue, a nervous tissue and a vascular tissue. And beyond that, it has also some other kinds of tissues, like for example a glandular tissue, right, which secretes acid secretions so that it helps the stomach in breaking down proteins. One very useful tip for you to remember is that every organ, no matter what kind of tissue is found in that organ, has three kinds of tissues. VAN, this abbreviation is VAN, which is a vein, an artery and a nerve. So this means that any organ, whether it has some specialized tissue or not, that is different for different organs, but it has a vascular tissue and it has a nervous tissue, because without a vascular tissue, in other words without a blood supply and a nervous tissue, no organ can survive. Another important organ is the intestine, right? The intestine is an organ, and it's a combination of the intestinal epithelial tissue, it's a combination of the muscle tissue, although the nervous and the vascular tissue have not been mentioned over here, but of course the intestine has nervous tissue and vascular tissue. Then your lungs. Your lungs serve the purpose of inhaling and exhaling air. So for that they need epithelial tissue, they need connective tissue, they also need vascular tissue, and they need nervous tissue. So different tissues combine to form an organ. Moving one step further, just as we studied specialized cells, and we said that same kind of cells, they join together to form a tissue. Different kinds of tissues, they join together to form an organ. So different kinds of organs, they will work together to make up an organ system. For example, if we take into account the digestive system is a combination of stomach, your food pipe, intestines, your rectum, your colon. So all these different organs, they join together to form the organ system, which is known as the digestive system or the gastrointestinal system. Similarly, we have the respiratory system, which is made up of the trachea. This is the trachea, the windpipe. These two are bronchi, the branches of the trachea. Then we have lungs, one lung on the right side, one lung on the left side, and within the lungs then we have tiny grape-like clusters or the air sacs or alveoli. So this means that the respiratory system is also a combination of different organs. Different organs make up the respiratory system. Similarly, we have other systems in the body also, like the circulatory system, the nervous system, the skeletal system, the muscular system. In every system, one thing is common, which is different organs, they work together to make up an organ system. And then the last thing, which is the organism. A very simple word for an organism is a living thing. Every living thing on this planet is an organism within itself. An organism can be a tiny organism like a single-celled amoeba or a single-celled bacterium, or an organism can be a human being, which is a highly complex multicellular organism. If it is a highly complex multicellular organism, then in that case we will define an organism as various organ systems working together to make up an organism. Like in front of you, you can see that this is one system, which is the nervous system. This is your respiratory system, this is your digestive system, and then various other systems have not been shown over here, which will also work together to give rise to this organism. So this is how we define cells, tissues, organs, systems, and then finally organism. So this is actually a hierarchy of different kinds of cells and tissues inside bodies of living organisms, going from the smallest to the biggest. And then we move on to some basic key definitions which are given in your textbook. So what I have done is that I have collected those definitions for your reinforcement. Let's just quickly go through them. A tissue is a group of cells with similar structures working together to perform a shared function. And I have drawn a handmade drawing in which I have shown you cells forming an epithelium in this case, and these cells have been taken from the inner part of your mouth cavity, right, your cheek cells. Then is similar kinds of muscle cells will form the muscle tissue. This diagram has also been taken from your textbook, in which these are different cells, circular shaped cells which are joined together to form a small tube. Such kind of cells are found in your kidneys, and they help in excretion in the formation of the urine. Then a definition of an organ. An organ is a structure which is made up of a group of tissues working together to perform a special function. Example, stomach is an organ, bone is an organ, lungs are organs. If we take into account plants, then in plants, roots, they are organs, flower is an organ, leaf is an organ. Because each of these by definition is a group of different kinds of tissues working together, so hence they come under the classification of an organ. An organ system, just a repetition, is a group of organs with related functions working together to perform a body function. This was the example of a human being. If you want to quote an example for a plant, I would say a tree An organ system for a plant would be, sorry, not the tree, but the vascular system of the plants, which is made up of the xylem and the phloem. These are different kinds of tissues which play a role in the transport of food, substances, and water in the plant. We will be going into details about these when we reach that chapter. Now, a summary of all that we have done, and also some more details about examples of organisms. So an organism is an individual animal or a plant formed by all the organs and systems working together to produce an independent living thing. So an independent living thing is an amoeba also, although it's unicellular. Ape is an independent living thing. Ant, a lion, a tree is an organism, a human being is an organism, a fish is an organism, a tiny fungus is an organism, bacteria is an organism, yeast is an organism. So with this, we have completed the learning outcome. Let me just shade this learning outcome for you. We have completed the learning outcome under the unit 1.2, and the learning outcome is understanding that cells become specialized and their structures are related to their specific functions as illustrated by the examples covered in the syllabus. Understand the terms cell, tissue, organ, organ system and organism as illustrated by examples covered in the syllabus. So for today, that's enough, and in the next class we will be covering the last learning outcome of this chapter, which is stating and using the formula magnification, and with that the unit cells will be completed. So till then, Allah Hafiz.